paradise fights back. If you'd like to give Wal a round of applause, round of a hand,
please. All of you, welcome to the GC. This is my home, and it's a real buzz to talk to my tribe in my hometown. Here we go. We're in Mayr country. The Gold Coast is beautiful, isn't it? But it used to be a lot more beautiful before European settlement. Mayr country in pre-settlement times was characterised by four major landscapes. The coast, which was then Wallam and rainforest. And unbeknownst to a lot of people just inland, we had vast wetlands on the Gold Coast that supported huge flocks of birds and wildlife. That rose into the sclerophyll woodlands, and that was all surrounded by the rainforest mountains. That made Mayr country. We're regarded as one of the biodiversity hotspots of Australia, if not the world, but seriously, we've lost a lot of biodiversity. What I'm going to talk about today is that process of loss of biodiversity, but then I'm going to talk about there's a lot of hope on the Gold Coast. There's a lot of good things happening, and I'm going to concentrate on one catchment where we're regaining a lot of biodiversity, and then I'll conclude and to see if that means that we can pass that point of peak biodiversity loss in this city and really start gaining sustainably in biodiversity. This is the centre of Surfers Paradise in 1918. That's serious, robust, great littoral rainforest. You know, the equal you see on Fraser Island today. The names of all the streets of Surfers Paradise, Palm Avenue, Fernie Avenue, Elkhorn Avenue, Staghorn Avenue, a testament to that history. Okay, just going through the biodiversity loss phase. I'll take you on a bit of a downer here before I give you a little bit of hope. So Mudgeeraba and Nerang were the timber towns. There were networks of railways into the hinterland that just absolutely exploited the timber resource in the hinterland. Then came, around the 30s came, I've got the big C here, fantastic, caustic. Then came the agriculture, and the main agriculture was banana farming and dairy farming. And it was great to have agriculture, but they did clear large areas of land in themselves. Then came, the Gold Coast was discovered. This area here was all strip mined for sand mining, and you could see the urban development following quickly after. So this is a big personal history for me. That's the first high-rise in the Gold Coast. It's called the Lennon's Hotel. My parents emigrated from Europe and worked there. Sorry. And we had a house here, and we used to walk to school through those sand dunes. We're here right now. That's where we are, just there. So the convention centre's just there. So sand mining and the relentless, ongoing urban development of the Gold Coast has started. The next frontier were the wetlands, those biodiverse areas that supported huge wildlife. Again, this was a big part of my life. They converted the wetlands, those biodiverse, productive wetlands, into sterile, symmetrical sort of deserts. That was our family home. So we moved from the beach, we moved to there. So my brothers and I, we saw the dredgers, we saw the bulldozers. Yeah. So we saw the whole change. The next frontier was the sclerophyll woodlands, and you know, the concept was lovely. This is in about the 70s, 80s, 90s. The concept was lovely. Rural residential living, you'd have your patch of forest, you'd have your patch of pasture, you'd have your fruit trees. But the reality, in many cases, was that many people had an unrestrained cat, they had unrestrained dogs, they had a teenager tearing around on a motorbike, and they would bring invasive weeds in, which would have an impact greater than that parcel of land. So it really was unsustainable. That sprawl had to be managed. So in 2005, that purple line is what's called the urban footprint. So we imposed an urban footprint on the Gold Coast, outside of which subdivision was prohibited. But that did mean more intense development inside the urban footprint. And that's what we've got today. We've got this fairly densely populated canal estate. You can just see the extent of the wetlands. And I'll just point out Sky Ridge here. That took out 200 hectares of prime glider habitat recently. So, you know, the urban footprint stopped going into the hinterland, but that intensity is a problem. And this is just half the Gold Coast. Just for clarity, I've done the southern half. The northern half has got many sky ridges. Now, you're from all over the country and you're thinking, well, this is the story of Australia, what's so special? But you look at Newcastle there, it was probably 10 times bigger than Gold Coast in the 60s. We're probably 30%, 50% bigger now. So the growth and the corresponding biodiversity loss was explosive. Okay, let's get on to the happy stuff now. This is a catchment I'm going to talk about. It's just representative of one of the catchments in the hinterland. So here's the urban footprint. This is Austinville catchment. It's the upper reaches of Mudgeebar Creek, and it really is a buffer between World Heritage, this urban footprint, and the biodiversity threats it has, and the World Heritage Lamington and Springbrook National Parks. The big threats, or the big dangers that happened to Austinville were in the 30s. We had an unemployment scheme, there was a lot of unemployment in the 30s, so they cleared a heap of subtropical lowland rainforest to grow bananas. That was failed, abandoned, and it quickly turned into this. At the other end of the valley, I talked about rural residential subdivision promoting invasive weeds. At the bottom end of the valley, there was rural residential subdivision that happened before the imposition of the urban footprint, and that released a lot of environmental weeds that that created this guy. But you know, as funny as this is, it was going to hammer and destroy our riparian zone. So there's a really good story here. So in conjunction with City of Gold Coast Naturally GC Landcare, we formed a group, and for 20 years, we're 20 years old this year. That was our first field out in 2005. And yeah, it was. I just can't emphasise how much the Naturally GC Landcare guys supported us. We didn't know what we were doing. Not many people knew what they were doing in those days, and they really supported us. And I also point out that a lot of other partnerships here. You know, absolutely key to this partnership was water gum. Water gum, I could do a whole biodiversity talk on water gum with their platypus, koala, turtle work. But in this case, what they do is they provide support for 40 unincorporated groups, one of which was Austinville Landcare. So we didn't have to go through all the nonsense and admin, and they provide us with insurance, banking services, help with grants. So it really allowed us to concentrate. And QWALT, the Queensland Landcare Group, provided that free insurance as well. One thing that, you know, when we started this weird weeds, restoration, but the whole Indigenous thing of environment is people and country, and the more you get into this game, you realise it's relationships, it's people. I get like this, sorry. So, but we only had limited impact. With the stuff we did, we can only work on council land. So we had to leverage our impact, and we did that by going grants. And we went hard on grants, and we got contractors to do this whole invasive stretch of weeds. And we turned this into this. We turned this into this. But any of you who have done grants will just feel depressed and feel the pain of, you know, the application, the milestone reports, the acquittal reports, all the drama of getting this. And I'll point out that Linda Durham's here. Linda was responsible for that first project, and I haven't seen her for X decades, and she's here today. So there you go, Linda. And yeah, so we raised $500,000 there to do that work. So the next stage was to sort out where the unemployment scheme was, and we did that in conjunction with our local NRM group. Again, we hired contractors. We turned that into this. Our group, it was pretty rugged country, so we couldn't work everywhere. The contractors had to do the heavy lifting, but where we could, our group worked. And again, many of you probably don't realise in our country, we don't have to plant. We can get rid of weeds. And I should point out, Phil Hoskins is here too. He did the contracting work for that other work. So there you go, Phil. So these contractors worked in this. This is now National Park. So this land was tacked on as a degraded park. Once it became the banana settlement scheme, it went to state forest, and then it went to National Park, and it was just tacked on as a really degraded part of World Heritage National Park. So national parks didn't have the money to do it, so we stepped in with Healthy Land and Water, and that's the work they had to do. But again, I'm super proud that, you know, these guys only walked out 2 weeks ago. So this has been a 10-year journey of doing this. And again, I talk about process, I talk about grants, but ultimately we are bringing back beautiful, rare and endangered species, animal and plant. Again, heap of grant work. And I'll just point out, a big one of them was the Landcare Australia grant, $230,000. The impact we've had is the yellow. So we've restored that riparian zone, and that blue area is National Park. It was a lot easier in that other area because the vines hadn't got that far, so it was just easier wedge to work with, but still had a big impact. Okay, the next positive was just the leader of the Conservation Partnerships just walked into the room, so I'm going to sing your praises here. So this is a wonderful program. I don't think you realise how good Gold Coast City is in supporting private landowners. So again, this is part of our personal journey. Heather and I bought land there when I was 19, right at the top end of the catchment. So again, I've seen the changes there. This was how our property looked in the 70s when we bought it. And Heather and I have worked very hard, but the reality is we couldn't have finished this property, the restoration, in our lifetime without the support of the Conservation Partnerships people. So they've got a couple of tiers. They've got the Land for Wildlife, which is education and training, and it's a lot more than that, but it's not a lot of financial support, but it's amazing moral support. But the next level up is the voluntary conservation agreements, and they're seriously wild on the Gold Coast. We initially got a $20,000 grant. We get $7,000 a year reimbursements. We don't pay rates. We get free fauna surveys. We get free everything. You know, so the Gold Coast's support of private owners is amazing. And that's how our place looks now. Just a little bit on ferals. the conservation support goes to feral. So we have eliminated foxes pretty well, and that's brought the potoroos and the paddymellons back. And we have another partnership with a group called our Friends of National Parks. Ironically, they're not allowed to put their gear in national parks, so we're next to a national park. They put a couple of felixes in over the last few months, and I'm so happy to say we got this guy. Finally, we've been monitoring for so long. So we can get the foxes, but the cats are smart. That's a big feral cat. We live a long way from any urban area, so that's a big feral cat. We've actually got 2 feral cats and a fox in the last month. So that's a buzz. And the end result is this. You know, our places, you know, really, we're very blessed to have this stuff. And the birds, of course. The bird life's coming back. A point I'd make is that Gold Coast is the second biggest city in Australia. It's got a bigger budget than Tasmania. So in 1995, we amalgamated all our small councils and they made basically regional councils. So Brisbane's the biggest, Gold Coast City's second. This is by rate base and population. Third, Sunshine Coast 10th. And it's no coincidence that those big councils with big urban rate bases can afford to help conservation. And I'm seeing Andrew there lamenting the fact he's in Somerset Council that doesn't do it. It's a bit unfair, really, but it's just the way it rolls, unfortunately. So that's the impact of the conservation partnerships. You can see the change of culture in those land for wildlife properties and the very real change in landscape in the VCA properties, voluntary conservation agreement properties. And last but not least, this council again is amazing. They have 15,000 hectares of land they manage, and a lot of that they've bought to complement the national park estate. And we're surrounded by that. We're surrounded by national park and these guys. And seriously, they're up there most weeks doing the regen up there. So they've got one of the biggest publicly funded restoration teams in Australia. And they've got a ranger network and they do fire trails. It's a well-funded conservation acquisition and management strategy. And it's crazy how much land they've bought in our valley. So they've got that land in our valley. So you can see there's the private land, there's the national park, and these guys are actively managing this land as well. So bang, 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 you've got the community-led riparian stuff, you've got the private, the conservation partnership, private owners stuff, and you've got the council buying this and managing that. So at any level, the biodiversity gain in this catchment has been fantastic. So, but will paradise fight back? Like it was paradise. We're getting back to paradise in our little catchment. So you can see where they're, and there's many other catchments like us, Tamborine, Numinbar's doing the same, Currumbin's doing the same. But can we get into the urban footprint and do the same? I've really thought about this, and I think there's 6, how am I going for time? I'm still good, yeah. There's 6 key things I think we need to do. We have our natural city strategy, and it's not spin, it's real. They're connecting with groups. We've got a partner advisory group from our community. That's something real. And fundamentally, we're changing the culture or the brand or the vision of this city from a Las Vegas lookalike to a city with a livable city with nature at its core. And that's what we've got to do to break past peak biodiversity loss and improve. A key tenet of the... Can everyone hear me? I'm not at the microphone. Is that cool? Yeah. We've got a key tenet of our natural city is to maintain 51%. And you heard the mayor, the acting mayor this morning, they're actually fair income about that target. And we've got to hold them to account and keep that target. So if we keep that 51%, we've got a good chance. And then no expansion of the urban footprint. Can you imagine every time they review the urban footprint every 5 years, every developer, every real estate agent is putting things in letterboxes arguing that they should expand the urban footprint? We've got to hold the line on that as well. But with those two things, we're going to have more green and more people. But to do that, we need more creative design. We've got to think about Amsterdam. We've got to think about Vienna. We've got to think Copenhagen and Singapore. You know, they're livable cities with creative design and getting bureaucracy out of the way and allowed planners to be creative. And watching more Gardening Australia and Costa doing is, you know, gardens, we can build biodiversity in our urban areas. So that's the challenge. We've got to hold the line and do that creative urban design and work. And then fire, it's a big thing for me. You know, the Indigenous guys were in the landscape, and when the weather was good, they'd do an ecological burn. They were nimble. We're not nimble. We've got RDOs, we've got holidays, we've got whatever, and we're not as nimble as we should be. We need to get as nimble as the Indigenous cultures were, and they need to help us get there. And ultimately, to adapt to climate change, the best thing we can do is make our cities more biodiverse. So, in summary, I asked a lot of people about, well, how do we break past this peak biodiversity loss and start improving the biodiversity of the city instead of it going down? We might be there yet, but to keep that going, it really surprised me that it goes back to the people and country thing again. We need to get people caring about the environment. We need to engage the community. We need that fertile ground. We can have all the policies in the world, but unless we've got that fertile ground of communities that want and care about the environment, we won't get there. But with that, I think we've got a bloody good chance on the Gold Coast to do that. Thank you.
All right, so we've probably got a bit of time for a couple of quick questions.
Thank you. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing the story and sparking some hope, I think, and for all the work you've done and you continue to do. Thank you. I was curious if there was something that you know now or have learned throughout the process that you wish you had known back then that you might want to share with other groups on the ground who might be facing similar challenges.
Look, the big, again, Gold Coast City, when we first attacked the weeds at the front end of the vines, we created a big edge effect. So we tidied up and got biodiversity in the riparian zone, but there's a massive edge effect. We couldn't have, as a Landcare group, managed that edge effect. Council, fortunately, for the last 15 years, has probably put 10 grand a year, up to 15 grand a year into managing that edge effect. So again, we've got a good council that supports initiatives. Whereas the rainforest end of the valley, when we restore that, it's going to be like that forever. It doesn't need ongoing management. So, but you know, I'm still very proud, and I think it's still very useful that we've done that, because when you drive into our valley, you see native vegetation. It's a big education thing, but we didn't realise the ongoing maintenance of a biodiverse zone. So we've done it, council's helping us, but we're dependent on that ongoing contract to maintain it. But having said that, there's more land for wildlife properties and more education. Hopefully in the future the landowners will manage that riparian zone. But that was a huge learning for me. I thought, oh my God, what have I done? We've created a monster. But luckily, council supported us.
Yep, g'day. You briefly mentioned that you didn't have to plant. Can you tell me the difference about your revegetation versus your regeneration outcomes?
I didn't hear all of that. This is just about natural regen. And
Yep.
yeah, so in some areas where it's very, very degraded, you need to plant, but increasingly on the Gold Coast, planting really isn't the way to go. The resilience of the seed bank is so strong, when you get rid of the weeds and you carefully knock them out and let the natives grow, particularly in the rainforest areas, you will get 100% canopy within 18 months to 2 years. Yeah, so you just don't need to do that. But like in that, some of those areas where we took out vast areas of vines, we just had to plant to quickly hold the soil in before the floods came. So it's a little bit of, I'm getting with the big red stop sign here. But yeah, so we're very fortunate that we can do natural regen here. Thank you.
All right.